Hi everyone, my name is Samboge Sanson, a PhD scholar from Curtin Business and Law, Curtin University here in Australia. I'll be presenting part of my research titled Formal Seed Distribution in Nigeria, the role of seed supply chain management. First, looking at the outline, we'll be discussing it based on the introduction, problem statement, objective, research method, result and discussion, conclusion before the recommendations. The overview of Nigerian agricultural sector. Nigeria is located in West Africa. The landmass of Nigeria is over 900,000 square kilometers, and 85.5% of this land is arable land. Nigeria agriculture employ about 70% of the Nigerian population. The same sector was contributing 57.2% to the GDP as of 1960s. It declines to 25% according to 2017 data. Crop production accounts for about 90% of agricultural sector's contribution to the GDP. So the productivity of agricultural produce in Nigeria compared to other countries was mentioned to be low according to the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations. Looking at the data available, it mentioned that Nigeria in 1960, a crop like maize had a productivity of 0.8%, 0.8 tons per hectare, while the productivity of maize in the US in the same 1960 was 3.9 tons per hectare. Nigeria in 2018, the productivity of maize increases to 2.1 ton per hectare, while in the US, the productivity increases to 11.7 tons per hectare. Having in mind that the productivity of crop depends on the quality of the seed. The seed has a significant contribution in the productivity of any agricultural produce. So the findings indicated, the data, available literature indicated that the seeds supply chain in US is very effective. That's why they are able to have crop varieties with high productivity. Seed system is divided into two, which they are formal and informal seed system. So in this regard, we'll be discussing the formal seed supply chain, which has a regulation and it has high productivity when compared to the informal seed system. So the formal seed supply chain has the following features. First, it has a long lead time. That's to say the productivity, the production of seed takes longer because it has to go into different stages. You are producing different seed classes before the final stage, which is a certified seed, is produced. The seed supply chain is fragmented. It has fragmented seed supply chain stakeholders. Different seed categories, seed classes are produced by different seed supply chain stakeholders in different processes. The formal seed supply chain has high uncertainty because you are dealing with a living thing. So there is high uncertainty in the production of seed. Seed supply chain also requires high inventory. This is because you are producing something that it has to be produced early before the season that it will be used. So in Nigeria, the seed system or the seed companies and research institutions that produce these seeds are distributed in all geographical zones. Looking at the available literature from the National Agricultural Seed Council, they identify that the research institutions are majorly located in the northern part of the country. And that's why, according to the data, we have the highest number of seed companies more than more than 60% are located in the northern part of the country. The southern part of the country, they have the least, and all these seed companies and research institutions, they produce seed varieties that are adapted to that region. So you cannot produce seed in the south and transfer it to the north. Neither would you produce from the north, bringing it down to the south. Formal seed supply chain in Nigeria. The formal seed system or the formal seed regulation was enacted in 1992. The seed sector was managed by the department in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture called the National Seed Services. The National Seed Services was later transformed to National Agricultural Seed Council, giving it a robust, uh, making it a parastatal under the Federal Ministry, unlike the time that it was a department. So, the problem statement for this research: formal seed system is underdeveloped compared to other countries, as indicated in the Lake region. The NACS is responsible for the certification of all classes of seed. The majority of the seed suppliers in Nigeria, that's the seed companies, depend on the public sector for the production of early generation seed, which is a breeder seed. Formal seed adoption remains low at less than 15%. The challenges related to coordination of the public and private sector seed supply chain made it very difficult for the system to be effective. That means the seed supply chain in Nigeria is ineffective. Objectives of the research: identify the seed supply chain stakeholders. 2. To evaluate the role of the seed supply chain stakeholders, and to identify and discuss the challenges of the formal seed system. Research method: exploratory qualitative research method was employed to understand the seed supply chain. Data were collected through semi-structured interview questions. 28 seed supply chain stakeholders were interviewed to achieve the data saturation. Annual reports from the National Agricultural Seed Council were used to provide a better understanding of the interview data. NVivo version 12 was used to categorize the information into codes and themes. Results and discussion. The seed classification in Nigeria. Seed are classified into breeder seed, foundation seed, and certified seed. While the seed supply chain stakeholders comprises of research institutions, National Agricultural Seed Council, seed companies, community seed producers, agro dealers, government donor agencies, before farmers, who are the final stakeholders. So the breeder seed is produced majorly by the research institutions and the seed companies. This breeder seed produced by the research institutions are either multiplied by the research institutions to foundation seed, or they are given to the seed companies to multiply them to foundation seeds. Also, the breeder seed produced by the seed companies, they cannot be multiplied by any other institutions for further use. They are only multiplied by the same seed company that produced that breeder seed. So all the classes of seeds produced by the seed companies must not go to another seed company. It has to be used by that same seed company. The only exception is that breeder seed produced by the seed companies and the research institutions must be tested by the NACS. So the NACS multiply the breeder seed produced by the research institutions and the seed companies to ascertain the claims of those seed companies before the same seed will be injected into the seed companies to produce certified seeds. So the foundation seed produced by the research institutions can either be multiplied by the seed companies or by the community seed producers. And then further, the certified seed produced by the seed companies can either be given, or the farmers can buy, large scale farmers can buy directly from the seed companies, or the seed companies will now supply agro dealers with these certified seeds so that they will sell it to farmers. Another category is when the government wants to implement seed subsidy. The government or any organization that wants to provide seed aid to farmers, they can buy seed from the seed companies and give them to the farmers. So the only special thing about the seed system in Nigeria is that the seed production by the seed companies must go along with the seed companies, while the community seed producers, they don't have the capacity to produce foundation seed. They produce only the certified seed, and for them, they sell them directly to the farmers. Formal seed supply chain challenges. The first category of the seed supply chain challenges is certified seed adoption. First, low seed adoption. Farmers are sticked. Farmers cultivate, majority of the farmers cultivate their local seed varieties. Two, low purchasing power by these farmers. Most of these farmers, they are small scale farmers. So whatsoever they produce during the season, they will consume them, or they will sell all to keep a little for theirs for the following season's production. Also, another thing is lack of distinction between seed varieties. The seed, the farmers find it difficult to accept that hybrid seed and open pollinated varieties are different. So the farmers tend to assume all of them, they are all the same improved seed varieties, and they want to pay the same. For that reason, the seed companies withdraws from providing them with hybrid seed varieties. Different seed quality perception. These farmers have different perception to seed quality. Some farmers may like seed quality based on the byproduct. Some will like it because of the productivity. Another challenge is funding. Funding affects the seed supply chain in Nigeria. First, the National Agricultural Seed Council, who manages the entire seed supply chain, they are not well funded, especially when it comes to the release of the funds. The seed certification officer and inspectors also complain of mobility. They don't have enough mobility facilities. Financing of these seed companies, most of these seed companies are small scale seed companies that they don't have enough capital to establish or to produce other category classes of seed. Industrial action by the research institutions. The research institutions are majorly public sector dependent. So when the government funding is not available, these stakeholders will decide to go on industrial action, shut down the system, and there will not be production of either breeder seed or foundation seed that year, which will later affect the farming season the following season. Another category of supply chain challenges is human capital requirement. There are few breeders in the industry. We don't have many trained seed breeders in the system, and inadequate manpower within the National Agricultural Seed Council. According to the findings of this research, it was mentioned that the last time they had employment was over 20 years, 10 years ago. So they have inadequate manpower to manage the seed supply chain. Poor remuneration of these staff. Even these staff, some of them, they will use their personal money to move from one location to another, but at the end of the day, they will not be reimbursed back. Labor intensive in seed production, people run away from it because it is labor intensive. It requires a lot of commitment. People are leaving seed industry also to to either universities for lecturing, because it's, according to them, people working in the universities gain more benefit than research institutions, which before you develop a seed variety, it will take long. Overstretching of the few staff. These staffs, they complain that they are overstretched. They don't have enough to take care of themselves, and at the same time, they are overstretched. They work more than what they have. Time consuming, takes long to develop a seed variety. Another category is inadequate facilities. These are facilities that depends on at the research institutions. Most of the research institutions, this breeder seed production requires things like irrigation system, which they are not available in some of the research institutions, or the facilities established already, they are not working again. Another thing within that within that system is security and communication. Some of the staffs, they complain that when they move to places far away from home, they don't communicate with their home, their family, and because of security reasons, they are afraid of going out. Another thing with that, the storage facilities by the agro dealers. Most of these agro dealers, they don't have facilities. They don't have facilities to store these seeds. Sometimes they will just put seed, which is a living thing, with fertilizer before the seed germination percentage will go down, or sometimes will go completely, they will die off. Office space and equipment, most of them, according to laboratory technicians, they don't have access, they don't have a good office space or equipment for seed testing. Seed processing and testing facilities also is another challenge. Irrigation, as mentioned earlier. So another category is inadequate knowledge. This inadequate knowledge ranges from knowledge, the technical knowledge to produce seed by the seed companies, or training capacity, or that's capacity building. Training and capacity building of the staff is not adequate to make them effective. Inadequate awareness. The findings of this research indicated that some of the farmers in some localities, they are not even aware of the improved seed varieties for place of adoption. Seed marketing. Cost of transportation. Seed is bulky, and the cost of transportation is always high. Few seed companies in the system. It was mentioned that they don't have enough seed companies to provide farmers along with the seeds. Transborder challenges. Seed produced in other countries tends to be cheaper than the seeds in Nigeria. That affects the development of the local seed industry. Poor internal quality control by the seed company. That's another reason. And the poor distribution network. Some locations do not, there is no access to seed in most of the locations. Poor seed handling by the seed suppliers. Seed is a living thing. Before transporting them, you handle them the way you handle them, you can suffocate the seed and it will die. Another category is seed policy and subsidy. Corruption is very common, especially when there is government intervention through seed subsidy. Inability to pay seed suppliers, or delay to pay them. Sometimes when there is a seed subsidy, the government find it difficult to pay them, or they delay them. So that affects the performance of the seed companies. Seed aid. The findings also indicated that when there is seed aid, farmers tend to believe that they cannot buy seed on their own. They always rely on the seed aid. So there's no economic planning for the seed. There is no plan for the quality of the seed that will be required by farmers and how it will be distributed. Inconsistencies policies is another thing. Lack of intellectual property right of the plant breeders, especially the multinational seed companies, are affected because of that. Political interference. Whenever there is seed subsidy, the politicians tend to interfere into the seed distribution, and that affects the seed system, which sometimes they favor either relatives, friends to give them contracts. These are people that, according to the findings, they don't have even a seed company, talk less of the seed available to supply. Another category is seed production and quality issues. These seed companies, they tend to increase quality, they tend to increase adulterate seeds for gains. So for that reason, it affects the performance of the seed company. Low seed productivity. Most of the seeds have low productivity or inadequate supply of other classes of seed before the next stage. So like breeder seed, they are not supplied, they are not in a the supply is not adequate for the seed companies to multiply them to foundation seed or certified seed. Dependence on open pollinated varieties. The system in Nigeria depends mostly on open pollinated varieties. They don't have hybrid varieties. That affects the development of the seed system. So the conclusion, the findings of this research indicated that agroecological zone is very important factor in seed supply chain, unlike other supply chains that can depend on you can produce anything from other part of the world and transport it. in seed supply chain, it has to be produced in a local community where it will be adopted. These studies also identify that the public sector is a major producer of the breeder seed. So the initial source of seed, the first class of seed, is produced by the public research institutions. The challenges of the seed supply chain indicated that there is a need to improve the performance of the seed suppliers, especially the first class of the seed. Recommendations for this research is that there is a need to conduct a cost-benefit analysis of the seed business to know why these seed companies are not delivering as expected. Use of genetically modified seed is another option to improve access to quality seed in Nigeria. Seed policies also should be looked into to improve the entire seed system. Thank you for listening.